Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Unfortunately, since the launch of especially season 1 here in Battlefield 6, the game has continued to stumble for a handful of reasons. Some of it is gameplay related with various different bugs and glitches impacting gameplay on a pretty high level. Some of it is just some of the gameplay getting stale and whatnot. Another big portion of it is one of the biggest things happening post-launch for Battlefield 6 was, of course, Battlefield REDSEC, or the Battlefield 6 Battle Royale, which had a lot of secrecy surrounding it. Even though it was playable during labs, they weren't really marketing it. They were going to do this giant shadow drop for it, and they did it really early on into the year, with season 1 and the Battle Royale dropping. And since then, launching a free-to-play title, Battlefield 6 has surprisingly not seen the game grow, which is usually the opposite of what happens when you launch a very hyped up free-to-play element of your game. For example, here, Charlie Intel reports this just the other day. 2 months after the REDSEC launch, Battlefield 6 and REDSEC have lost 80% of the players on Steam, with the game now peaking at 100 to 120,000 compared to 550,000 during the season 1 launch. So basically, at launch, crazy hyped, 750,000, 750,000 people on the game just on Steam, and then per usual, the vast majority of games that see a crazy, high, super successful launch typically see a drop off after that. Now, there are a few exceptions, like Arc Raiders has been insanely consistent, and props to them. I'm loving the game. Seems like everybody is right now, but the drop happens. That's pretty standard. And then season 1 drops, they launch the Battle Royale. There's more hype into it. It spikes back up. But then since then, it's been downfall, 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 just a slow and steady decrease of players over time. Why is that? I want to focus a little bit more on why that could be and why it could be pretty alarming and pretty concerning for the future of Battlefield 6 and especially the future of REDSEC. This was especially surprising as well. The game business reported on this a few weeks ago, saying Battlefield 6 REDSEC has had a muted launch, whereas the main game proved to be a very strong performer, as we saw. I mean, the hype was unreal for multiplayer and everything at launch. The number of Battlefield 6 players increased by just 3 million as a result of this free game / free mode, which just really is surprisingly low given the hype that Battlefield had at the time, and then it being a free-to-play element. Typically you'd see a massive spike up, but there's a lot that goes into why this played out the way it did. The launch in general was pretty surprising, and not just the fact that they shadow dropped it and didn't really market it until it was time for REDSEC to release. It was more surprising that they launched it just a few weeks after the full launch of the game. This is something I saw Jack Frags mention in his concerns video the other day, and funny enough, back when we were first talking about leaks and rumors for the REDSEC Battle Royale, when the initial release date was leaked from Modern Warzone, I believe it was, this is what I had to say at the time. Pushing this all together, kind of clumping it together all for October, is a little bit surprising to me, because I quite frankly, just based off the beta even, I feel like Battlefield 6 multiplayer should have time to thrive, and especially as we compare some stuff to COD here, because now COD might be sweating a little bit. They were really going to have a month or so to thrive in the spotlight before Black Ops 7 released, and for that first month, all that focus being on Battlefield 6 multiplayer, that should be a month where Battlefield dominates, where the retention is there, the player count is there. They don't necessarily need to drop a Battle Royale there. I was almost initially wondering if they were going to save it for a rainy day when it's like, okay, we're into the first season update for Battlefield 6. Yeah, maybe the player base is sort of plateaued a little bit, or maybe there's a bit of a drop off there. Let's drop the Battle Royale. You have this huge resurgence of players, this huge spike in players, new and old, and now you're back on top of the charts, and you're back on top of marketing, and you're back on top of what everybody's talking about, right? But instead, they're kind of clumping it together. So this could almost backfire a little bit for Battlefield here. It could also just surge their player numbers even more. If they're still riding the hype of launch with multiplayer and campaign, and then they drop the Battle Royale free to play, they just surge even further. So could be very good. Could also, sort of inflict some self wounds there in a sense there, if there is too much overshadowing done by the Battle Royale. So unfortunately, it seems as if I was kind of correct in that worry of them launching this so fast and so soon, that instead of building off of the hype, it does kind of backfire, because maybe that launch does seem a little bit rushed, and I think that is kind of the case. While I think there is so much potential in REDSEC, and obviously when you look at the player accounts, it's not like the game is doing bad. Steam is just one platform. There's still a massive audience on the EA app, on console as well, across PlayStation and Xbox. Like, the game's not doing bad, it's just not reaching its full potential, and it could be doing quite a bit better. And when you launch REDSEC free to play, it's got hype going into it, it's building off of a massive hype wave of launch. It just doesn't feel completely polished. At its core, I think there is a lot of potential there. I think it really plays well as a true battle royale, as a Battlefield battle royale as well, and I've really enjoyed gameplay. But launch in and of itself certainly had its, speed bumps, its hiccups. Not having a solos or a trios option, limiting it to just duos and quads, just, I think, blatantly a mistake. Not everyone wants to play with a squad or has a squad that enjoys the same game they do. Not everyone always has 4 players. Sometimes they only have 3. Like, you're just limiting the game for no real reason there. Not having solos, duos, trios, and quads all available out of the gates. And I think part of that is because they released this battle royale so quickly. They've even said recently they're still working on testing solos to figure out the best balance for it, since obviously your classes are going to play different in solos, and gameplay is going to be approached a little bit different there, as opposed to when you're working as a team and you have your different abilities per class. That's something you probably could be testing, using in labs and getting feedback on, and then having that ready for a full launch, instead of launching just straight up without it, then obviously excluding this massive player base who doesn't want to play duos, trios, or quads. And then obviously no trios in and of itself, again, just limiting the game for no real reason there. You also have gameplay dynamics that are pretty controversial, especially the tanks, for example, which are very easily accessible through some of the missions and create a massive imbalance in a lot of gameplay, especially late game scenarios where you maybe don't have the ability to loot as much and prepare as much and have anti-tank options on your self or in your squad. You run into a tank late game, well, it's like, okay, they've won. Not really anything I can do here besides hope that this player somehow forgets how to drive, or maybe his game crashes and then we get the free win, right? So that imbalance there, that somewhat overpowered gameplay element has obviously caused a lot of drama in the community and in the player base itself, and not something that's really been addressed since launch there. Again, something that maybe with more time becomes more balanced, and then it doesn't launch in that state there. You also have this gameplay loop and its current state that is not super fleshed out. There's not a ton of depth to it. Now, the core gameplay of REDSEC, again, I think is really good. I love the gunplay. I love the map. I love how it flows there. But the gameplay loop of, okay, I'm going to drop in. I know where I'm dropping. I do 1 or 2 missions. I've got my custom gun or I've got a tank, and that's the game. It's not really going to be the most unique experience game over game, whereas maybe if they had more missions or a larger variety of rewards for those missions, that's going to offer you more to do. Or if you could acquire things through doing other things in game besides just doing straight up missions, maybe going to a certain place and solving an Easter egg or doing something specific like that to get rewards, that adds more depth to the gameplay. And again, something that if they bake this game in the oven a little bit longer, if they spend a little bit more time cooking it, it probably ends up launching in a more successful state. The competitive scene, also kind of a nightmare here, and this is something that is a double whammy for them. Not only do they miss out on the competitive scene being built up for REDSEC initially here, it's a great way to market the game and show that the game is competitive, it has this competitive nature, and brings eyes to the subject and eyes to the gameplay in general. And with their REDSEC Elite series they were planning to launch earlier on this year, the first day they were trying to do the initial qualifier for it or whatever, they had just done the major update like 2 days before, and it completely broke the game. Hit reg sucked, audio sucked, there was constant crashing and stuttering and full-on game-breaking issues, and they had to completely cancel the tournament and push it all the way back to 2026, where we'll learn more information about it at some point in the early new year, which is just a terrible look for them. That again is likely a result of this maybe being pushed live a little bit too soon, which is really, really unfortunate there. There is so much potential with REDSEC being able to be built out as its own thing and to continue building up the Battlefield name right now that they've just missed on. And I don't know if that's something they can necessarily get back because the game's already out. It's going to have to go through several overhauls and then win back trust and win back a player base that might have already become largely disinterested with it. And while Ripple Effect is still in charge of working on REDSEC, and this isn't going to take away from multiplayer or anything like that going forward, it's still this issue of, okay, do we need to focus more on REDSEC content this season and we'll push back some of this stuff for multiplayer to a later season? How do we have to split this? Like, how much do we give attention to one versus the other in terms of marketing, in terms of announcements? They have to juggle this and they have to balance this in ways that, again, were probably preventable, had they not been so eager to get it out there and try and capitalize off the hype that likely was going to sustain itself regardless because Battlefield 6 launched so strong. This isn't necessarily wildly unusual for Battlefield titles. We've seen Battlefield titles launch decently well and then taper off, and then they sort of build back up over year 2, year 3 because they're not this 12-month game or 11-month game like Call of Duty is, for example. But it is in a pretty concerning state right now where the game is just not really doing as well as it could be, and it's a lot of self-inflicted wounds here for the reasoning behind it. Now, obviously, the devs will be back in office full-time here in the new year. They'll be getting new updates out for the new seasons, and the communication will be back, so it's quite possible we see things turn around here in the relatively near future, and that's personally what I'm rooting for. I do think there's a decent reason to be worried right now about Battlefield 6 overall, and then definitely REDSEC specifically because of the state of the game and how it's been approached thus far. Hopefully they turn things around, and I'm confident they'll be able to do so, at least to a certain extent. It's just a matter of, is it too late already in some cases here? Time is going to tell how things play out, obviously, as we see new updates, new communication, new things brought up here for Battlefield 6 and REDSEC. You guys know I'm going to keep you in the know with all the details right as they surface, so be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay informed. And if you guys enjoyed this video, you want to help share it around to get more eyes on it, do me a favor, hit that like button on your way out. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.